Hey patrons, how's it going? It has been a while. I have been just striking out this month with getting sick. I'm currently battling a cold. I got really sick when I was in India, actually once I returned from India. And it's a really busy time to be shooting, so not a great time to get sick. I've been a little behind. Patiently waiting for edits from the full workshop videos. They're coming along. They said probably early November-ish. So what can I say? We just have to be patient, and it is a great glimpse into how I feel like a wedding client, probably waiting for their full gallery. So in the meantime, I wanted to knock out the group critique number 3. And as usual, I'll open up submissions for number 4 if anybody wants to submit. I ask just one submission per person, and we'll go from there. So these are in just imported order, no particular order. I would just like to also say that this is just my opinion, sort of my gut instinct and intuition about each shot. It's not necessarily, this is how it should be, right or wrong critique. And it's impossible for me to say what the actual circumstances of the situation were, right? I might recommend pan to the left or the right or up or down a little bit, but in reality, that wasn't possible because there was something in the way or whatever. So, you know, keep that perspective in mind. I'm not really trying to upset anybody in any real way, but let's jump right in. So this one, I applaud the use of off-camera flash, especially getting this beautiful quality of light on the subject. Like, that is just insane. Got to charge my Apple Pencil. Let's take a moment to just reflect on how beautiful this fall weather is. Do you like our Halloween decorations? Pretty nice, right? Let's see if this works. Bloop. Yes, excellent. Okay, so the quality of light on our face is just amazing. Love that. I even like how it's not evenly lit across the entire face. Like this shadowy portion here is actually kind of great. It just adds to the drama of her eyes and emphasizes sort of this, this moodiness that I love. The only thing is just compositionally, it's not as interesting as maybe it could be. If maybe you emphasized more the bride like this. You know, I don't think that this portion of the artist is adding much. You know, kind of having a floating hand out of nowhere adds to some mystery a lot of times, especially if you could have directed the makeup artist to just like hold your hand as straight out as close as possible. Might have been cool. That's really the only thing that's really lacking here is a nice distinct compositional element. I love the amount of mist though, so it's a really tough balance, and I think you did a good job overall. Great, okay, moving on to the next one. Cool. Okay, very familiar location for me. Would maybe like to see a slightly different take on it. I mean, compositionally, you're doing a really great job. You know, this is sort of, these are your anchor lines, you know, kind of secondary anchor lines here, and you're doing a fantastic job composing them perfectly in this little window of triangle. It's just a little stiff in their, you know, expression. When people are smiling, especially, it's nice that they're looking at each other, good connection there, but we're missing that really, it's called Duchenne smiling, when these muscles crinkle up here, when you know as a human, even if it's just intuitive, that it's a real life, actual genuine laugh versus just a smile. They could have easily just been smiling at the camera and it would have felt about the same in terms of emotion. And you set yourself up really well with having them hold hands here, but play into this little triangle that's being created here with one of them actually looking at their hands. I tell clients all the time, just look down at your hands, like hold your hands, and you'll notice they'll look down when they do it. Like ask them to hold their hands. Just look, ask them to look at their hands. As simple as that, to force this in-between moment instead of this clear thing you set up and told them to kind of look at each other. Would have been way more interesting, I think, if he maybe was camera aware, looking at the camera or looking off to his other side, and she was like in the process of grabbing his hand. Feels a lot more candid and sort of like this in-between thing, but I really do like your framing overall, and the light is awesome and the colors and everything. Watch his suit. It's getting a little bit too blue here for me. You're probably losing or using blue luminance, so watch out for that so that white suits don't get too colorful. But whatever, maybe it was a slightly blue shirt. I had a photo recently, here I'll pull it up, somebody sent me a message about critiquing my processing saying the dress looked too pink. Let's see, this photo, and her dress was pink. So what are you going to do? I mean, it's already sort of a pink warm processing, but her dress was actually pink toned. So what are you going to do? Moving on. Love this moment. See, here we're starting to pick up on that smile that I was telling you about, the Duchenne smiling. You can tell from this guy, just subtly, it's not a huge natural smile, but these wrinkles here, he's definitely, those are involuntary muscles. Look for that when people laugh and try and capture that real peak moment. He's sort of missing it, so maybe you were just behind or just ahead for him, I don't know. The other thing, a little unflattering on his chin, that kind of sucks. Framing-wise, you're doing okay. You're heading down a direction, but this line here cutting off, you're trying to like frame them in this box, it seems like, and you're just missing his arm a little bit. Also, this sign, I would almost try and Photoshop out or get rid of. It might be valuable for the client to kind of remember where they're at in the scene and everything, but compositionally, it's a little bit distracting, so that's all I'll leave with that one. Nice moment. I love the connection. I love the closeness. You know, when you force people to actually touch, they lose the ability to have eye contact, so then they do look down or away or somewhere else. This is great. Big check mark. Biggest thing is the lack of composition. I mean, lighting is also very flat. It is flattering, but there's not much to the light other than the cool bokeh and the cool backlight. You're starting to get something kind of neat here. Maybe if it was darker and you could have had these lights been brighter relative to the darkness, they would have flared maybe a little bit easier, because you were starting to get somewhere with this flare right on his shoulder. That would have been cool. But compositionally, look at the biggest anchor, the biggest leading lines, right? It's this one here, and it's cutting, especially her, right off at the chin and the neck. No good. This is kind of your secondary anchor line, and you're doing okay, but it's still intercepting with their head. So if you could have gone higher and framed them just in this zone, let's see, let's go with yellow, just in this zone, if their heads could have been here, I think that would have been a lot stronger. Then I don't know how you balance that with losing some of the cool bokeh. You should have gone one extreme or the other, I believe, but otherwise, really nice moment, pretty safe, nice pose, it's really great. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Duchenne smiling right here. Both of them are doing it. It's clearly and intuitively natural, real smile, and you did a great job. Love the framing. You're doing pretty great. Shooting through something that's awesome. It's a little balanced incorrectly. Like I wish I could have moved the box. Let's see, if I could have shot the yellow frame more like here. This is really hard to draw. Like framed it a little lower so they were more balanced in the center, because this feels like a little bit of dead space. I like seeing his arm, but you're right on the edge there. This is a great photo. I like the processing, I like the warmth. I'm just seeing a little too much of his like arm. That's the only thing that's really pulling me. And maybe they could have been just a little bit closer together, but you know, it's a great connection between them. So that's all good. Ooh, I like this a lot. This is just a great, unique feel, something that you don't see all that often. Really nice job composing a reflection, which is hard to compose with. I'm curious what you were using, if it was the natural table or a phone or a prism or something, but really nice job balancing her head in between these anchor lines here. Like her whole body is just perfectly composed. And for a reflection, that's really tough to predict and handle. Yeah, not much I would change about this at all. Maybe you could go a little tighter with the crop. Something like this, more center weighted, because you do like the hands are awesome, but I still like want to draw focus to the face. Personally, that's what I would emphasize. Really nice, really cool use of black and white. Okay, moving on to this sucker. Real tough light to work with. I feel your pain here. It looks like it was, sun is sort of just starting to flirt with being usable or not. And right now I would have probably gone for more of a backlight or put them over in the shade probably to play with there. Just because, you know, she's actually lit pretty well. She's okay. Her dress and everything is kind of evenly lit, but he's just totally getting lost in the shadow. So that is bad news. You want both people lit well, or at least if you have one person only lit well, like emphasize them in the shot. They're equally emphasized here, and he's just getting lost in bad light. If you have to sacrifice somebody in bad light, probably sacrifice the guy, but you know, that's just my opinion on the light. Okay, nice use of off-camera flash. It's a little harsh. You know, you're probably working with small speed lights, so it is really tough to get soft shadows. You know, these are really harsh direct shadows, which is tough. It looks a little artificial. That's the reason I don't like soft, or that's why the reason I don't like small strobes, because the light just looks so harsh and artificial. But if that's the look you're going for, it's totally fine. The only thing I'm really jumping into is the composition here, this leading line cutting off his head. It's a real bummer. Maybe if you could even like clone stamp in more black shadow from some of this other area, put that over here. Yeah, just like chunk that over here, fill this in with more black, and they would be composed a lot nicer. The other thing is she is feeling a little balanced to the edge there. Like I think I would have gone a little tighter with the tractor. Since she's so close to the edge, like the tractor should be too. You have all this dead space here. I would probably compose it more like that. Something like that. Nice use of sunset light, really harsh direct sunset light. Obviously it's nice that it's lower in the sky, but the framing here is just outstanding. Let me go to something brighter. Here we go. Obviously this is a leading line, nicely framing him. Kind of annoying that it's cutting off his hat, but it's a big giant cowboy hat. What are you gonna do? Really nice that you kind of have these secondary lines that you're also balancing well. This is the only one that's sort of cutting off in a weird way, and it's subtle enough that I don't think it even matters. I would probably just play with the editing a little bit more. Maybe like an orangish gradient or something, kind of in this quadrant to kind of exaggerate and really feel like they're being washed in sunlight. Yeah, that would be kind of my biggest recommendation. Like this a lot. I just wish you'd been a little more particular about like getting their faces framed exactly the same way. Like we lost basically all her nose, just a smidge of it, but we have almost his entire nose and a little bit of his next eye. This is a situation where it might be worth stopping down. Don't shoot wide open. Really, really stop it down to get even more defined, crisp lines, or bring them closer. If it was possible, bring them closer to that. So this would have been a little bit more in focus and you would have had a nice crisp line separating them. But yeah, overall, excellent. Maybe play with the transform tool to see what it looks like when these are snapped perfectly grid shaped. That might be kind of cool. It might distort the bodies too much. So just try that. Try the transform tool. Anytime you have a perfect grid like that, just give it a try. Use the snap button. It looks like a little plus sign, and you can draw 4 lines and identify exactly what's supposed to be straight and what's not. Awesome shot. I mean, I do shots like this all the time. A lot of photographers do. That's the problem, is that it's just used all the time by everybody. You know, I'm assuming somebody was just like holding it off to the corner here and that's it. So it's nicely framed. I like that, you know, you're getting focus on her eyes. She's maybe, her head is turned a little bit, kind of getting this weird emphasis here on the side of her face. But overall, it's a nice, safe shot. I love the processing and toning. Nice, easy, flattering light. That's all good. But you're just missing a little bit of like connection, I think, that would have been cool with her expression, either looking at the camera or being a little bit more expressive. She's like sort of at, she's missing that peak moment in those wrinkles, really. And I'm sure a lot of people think like wrinkles bad. No, but when people are laughing, that's okay. I sacrifice a little flattery for the sake of a true, genuine laugh. Awesome processing. I like the gradient with the light leak effect that's happening up here. I assume maybe that's the developed tweaks and leak stuff, which I too have been enjoying quite a lot. Biggest thing is framing. I mean, and they're turned just a little bit too much that way. I'm losing the profile of the guy a little bit too much. Great read on her expression, just losing the guy's face, just a hair, just to have them turn a little bit, or if you could turn. And of course, they should be framed more in this zone. So if they could be in the middle of this circle here, you would have been in much better shape. Him getting cut off by the leaves is bad news. Otherwise, awesome. I love wide, short tree shots. This is crazy because this reminds me almost exactly of a picture that Farewell Weasty has of his family. If this is in Mexico on the same farm, I would not be surprised. It's just cool. Not that you're copying it or anything like that. It's just a great composition that I tend to love. So excellent use of framing. You know, it could have been a touch closer, maybe, just to see the family a little bit more. But honestly, I don't think I would even care about that. This is great on all metrics. I don't know how I would change it other than maybe having more expressive people or some gesture in their body language. This kid has a great gesture, but he's the only one, you know, playing with his other brother. So would have been nice if there was a little bit, maybe what I'm looking for is the mom and dad actually touching or being a little closer together, having a moment. But otherwise, the entire compositional framing is just excellent. You have these leading lines, this V shape, really just pointing to where you want to look, which is excellent. I love it. Good, good, good. Nice moment. I love it. I love the asymmetry of having one person being engaged in a certain direction of the frame, like this guy, looking down at her, and then another person being engaged in a totally different direction. Or she could have been looking anywhere else, really, as long as she wasn't looking at him, and it would have been all good. The only thing is the light is a little funky, and I can't undo the markups I just did on this, but the light is a little weird. I think it's just the cool magenta tone, and maybe darken this up just a smidge, because my eye is kind of trending to the left just a little bit. Like darken his arm, just pull in a gradient and darken that gradually a little bit. And then the lighting and the processing just looks a little too blue and magenta, or yeah, pinkish toned, just to make it simple. Strangely enough, my mind doesn't first go to how cool the flare is, which is probably what you wanted. My mind first goes to this crazy flare hair. So that's bad news. And that stuff is a pain to edit out. So really try and be mindful and aware of that when you're actually shooting. To just, yeah, can you fix your hair real fast? Just like, you know, give it a, you know, I could use a couple of those right now. Sweep that away, especially in backlit sunlight. That's when stray hairs are gonna be just emphasized to no end. It's completely unforgiving. Also would have backed up a little bit or stopped down a bit because he's just a little too soft for my taste. I would have definitely, if you backed up maybe just 2 or 3 big steps, even at 1.4 or wherever you were, I think you could have had both of them be acceptably sharp in the frame. You could still emphasize one or the other. I like that you're emphasizing her a bit, but yeah, you're just a little too close. I would have gone even a little bit closer if you're going to emphasize her more, because then it would have been just much more obvious that you meant to have him out of focus on purpose. But cool use of flare, I like where you're going with that. Kind of pay attention to those other details. Oh, who doesn't love a dog, especially a puppy? I don't know that I've ever done a shot with a puppy. So here's a situation where you have the same backlit hair stuff, like that's kind of annoying, but it's so much now that it just feels like wind blowing, like in a way that's a lot more flattering than the previous picture, so it kind of works. Just compositionally all over the place. Like you have these leading anchor lines just cutting people's faces off in really weird ways. Would have been cool if you could have composed so that all of this shape was like offset way down over here and the couple themselves were like up in the sky or something like that. So they just would have had that cool geometry framing them while they're in the sky. I don't know. It's a nice little moment. Do wish you could have seen what the puppy looked like and maybe just have them a slight bit closer together, something like that. Nice post-processing. If you're going for that desaturated look, you nailed it. Nice use of reflection. I love it. I really do. It's a little unflattering with the light coming from lower. That's kind of bad news for noses, and uplight is just always less flattering. So I don't know what the light source was. Would have been cool if it could have been a little higher up and more just from the side. Otherwise, I love the toning. The mood, this pose is a little bit boxy. Try and maybe get him to hold her elbow or have her hand up here on his chest, maybe her other arm up around his neck, just to change up that boxy rectangular pose a little bit. But overall, really cool composition. Interesting moment. I guess he's helping her dress, not undress. I don't know. So that's cool. Kind of some mystery there. Nice focus. Like everything is kind of drawing my eye right to where his hand is, the gesture and the action of the shot, which is really nice. Really, really cool. I guess if I'm being super picky, kind of annoying that this sort of leading line goes right to his nose. But that's being exceptionally picky. Everything is just like, yeah, focusing you right on the gesture, which is great. Little soft focus on her face. I guess that's just gonna come with the territory unless you stop down, but nice overall. I like the mood, I like the drama. Good use of just a window light if that's what it was. I'm curious. Cool. Post-processing, well, first of all, love this. Great, yay. Always a good name for a restaurant or a barbershop or what have you. Everything seems a little too pink and a little too blue. Even if you want to keep things cool toned, avoid the pink thing because it makes people look kind of cold more than just blue. Like the pink really makes people look sort of cold. Nice use of like him being a really bright light and her being a dark light. Like you balance that well with those really contrasty. Getting these guys a little lost, but they're almost like a little bonus. Like you take in everything else about the shot and then boom, there they are too once you look a little closer. So I actually kind of like that as a surprise element. Compositionally, I wish they really could have been a lot closer to you. You have a lot of noise here with this street and all the stuff just intercepting them in the background. So getting a little more bokeh out of it probably would have been nice. So maybe I would have had them a little bit closer to you if at all possible, and like, you know, just compose them at the waist or something like that. But overall, it's a really cool moment. All right, I love the post-processing on this. Curious what you used for that. Love shooting through some foreground element to add some interest. You know, you've got a lot of interesting lines here. You did a pretty good job balancing them in these two kind of anchor lines. And yeah, using a foreground element like that is a good way to add some depth and dimension to an otherwise pretty clean-cut composition. But I would have gone more center-weighted with it, something like this. And I would have added like more leafage, more of this foreground leaf. Maybe, you know, somewhere like here, just to really make it some sort of cool, mysterious element in the whole frame. All right, I really like the post-processing, good use of light. It's really easy, even light, so people are naturally a lot more flattering, and you did a good job with that. It's just all about framing, right? If you have easy, flat light, people are gonna generally look nice. Really work on paying attention to framing. And you have a lot more options with framing because light is pretty even whenever it's an overcast day like this. You can put them anywhere, and they'll probably look mostly fine. So the biggest thing with framing that I see as an opportunity would have been this sort of box here, or your landscape lines, and they're just sort of like, here's sort of an anchor line. This contrasted line here is just completely intercepting with her head in a way I don't love, that line there. And then all of these from the building are also, you know, they're here and they really should be here. Here, let me change colors. Here we go. Or somewhere else completely, just to be really clearly identified in the framing. Nice, not getting much of a connection. Again, it just feels like you told them to look at each other and there's no real gesture or you know, Duchenne smile between them. I love the use, I applaud the use of foreground leafage to create some interest. That's really good, but it's a little unbalanced. I kind of like how she's getting lost in the soft contrast of it a bit, but like that needs to be balanced with her. She's way too crisp. It needs to go in one direction or the other. She needs to be totally lost in some hazy leaf stuff and she needs to be totally contrasty, or they need to be balanced both. I think it's just something is pulling my eye sort of here and like all over the place. So that's kind of weird. Maybe it's also just the fact that this is just a really, really dark, deep shadow that's sort of anchoring my eye to the left. It's also not the most flattering pose, but you know, you're getting somewhere, you're getting there. All right, this one's really cool. I like that you're so far away and still able to get some sort of action and movement with her walking, or maybe she's just standing there. It would have been cool to have them maybe in a little bit more motion. The biggest thing is like this framing here, these two lines, she is totally not in the center. That would have been key. Like he's perfect. I don't know if he just fell into that or if you directed that to happen. He's really well composed. She's sort of lost. And maybe that would be justifiable if she was in a little bit more motion, but the way she is now, like no good. Would have been cool if you'd really played with the extremes of the frame too. But overall, nice toning, nice layering of, yeah, just being really far away and directing people. It's hard. Nice shot. It's a little cool toned. Looks like you've got some kind of film emulation happening with these bluish shadows. I don't love that. Nice moment. Face feels totally forced. It doesn't feel like a natural smile. Really talk to people when you're photographing them. Get them engaged and get them not thinking about their expression or am I smiling or am I not for this one. Don't tell them what expression to make unless you're going for a serious one, because most people can do that pretty well. But even with a serious expression, I ask people to part their lips, because it feels more in between and natural versus, you know, if people will listen and if they can do it. But nice gesture, nice framing with her eye and her arm, kind of just drawing your eye to whatever she's engaging with here, the flowers. That's really cool. But it does feel a little Dutch angle-y, and by that I mean the horizon. There's no clear horizon. Like it's almost sort of like this angle, and you want maybe a little bit more clear of a straight horizon line, unless there's a little bit more movement or occurring. That's my only justification for uneven horizon lines, is if having it at an angle lends itself to like exaggerating the movement. Awesome location, nicely framed. You're right on the edge of just perfection in your framing here. So tough to do with all these lines happening. And I don't even care about the difference in groomsmen numbers, or this is the same number, but the difference in the grooms being framed in this and the difference. I don't care about, all I care about is the fact that the groom is having his head cut off by this line. That sucks. The groom could have actually been even closer to you by a few steps, and the groomsman could have been in the exact same spots, and you could have framed him just perfectly right in this little white rectangular shape. Use of the space and nice to push yourself compositionally. Thing I hate is one, the groomsmen don't all have the same pose with their hands. That can be okay, but like get off the left over right, right over left. That is a completely different era of thinking about photos. Do not have people do that. Have them play with their cufflinks. Pull the Rock move. The Rock had a whole bunch of articles written about him because he always has the same pose in photos where he's doing this with his hands. Just some simple engagement, just holding his wrist, pretending like he needs to button his cufflink or whatever. Especially with the groom, like get his hands in his pockets, get his hands interacting with his button, something other than that straightforward left over right, right over left thing. So nice. You don't often see reflection and off-camera flash these days, so good job with that. And I like how you see this little flare here lending itself to it. That's awesome. It's just annoying that this horizon line is cutting their feet off instead of like stopping at their waist. Oop, that was a little, there we go. Like, whoop, I'm not good at drawing. Something around here, maybe a little lower around their butt line. There. That seems like that would have been a better spot for the horizon to hit. You know, if you could have just reflected that into or whatever to make that happen, I don't know. But otherwise, great use of color, great toning, nice technique overall. I'm impressed. Things are too magenta here. Skin tone, again, starts to look the most cold when there's pink, not necessarily cold blue. Pay attention to that tint slider, the green versus magenta. Get this a little bit more green, especially in her face. And then like the tip of his nose. So you gotta watch out for that. The other thing, great framing with these horizon lines. Awesome job. You did a good job not having those intercept. It's just these lines that are the problem. If they could have been right in this zone, let's see, this zone here, I think you would have been much better off compositionally. You could have had these three lines sort of anchoring this side of the frame, and then just had the couple right in this little box. It was set up right there for you. So maybe take them back someday, or take a different couple back and frame it a little differently. Not sure what I'm looking at here. The composition's all wrong. I mean, it's a good moment. The light is good enough and everything, but like this really needs to be more in this zone of composition. Way too much dead space down here with this lady's back and her hair and all of that. I mean, I like the hands. I like seeing the hands, but like there's just all this dead space. And then it kind of sucks that you're losing his head. Like he's clearly the star of this picture. You should see him fully in this particular frame or framing. Also kind of sucks that we're losing this guy's face a little too much. Like his eyes, let's see if we can, his eyes are just a little too cut off. So that's annoying. Otherwise, it also looks a little too magenta or blue. Now this one is incredibly blue, but for a good reason. Like you've gone past that phase of, did they mean to do that or not? What's kind of going on here, until like clearly they are supposed to look like this. And that's a good zone that you want to be. Shoot with intention. Make it painfully clear this is what you intended the viewer to realize as your idea. Only thing that jumps out at me, especially if you're turning people a completely different color, it's unflattering on her face. I think she would have been better served to be looking over her shoulder in this direction. So she was a little bit more side-lit, or sorry, a little less side-lit than she is. I don't know which way to describe it, but there's too much shading happening here on her eyes and her nose. It's kind of fine on this side. That side's all right, but these are all the problems right here. So it's just a matter of flattery. But nice use of neon and backlight and all of that. It's great. A little bit on the edge of getting to be a problem where you're cutting their arms off. Her arm is actually, I think, fine, but his arm, it just feels like that's his elbow right there that we're kind of losing. But you're totally fine, I think, overall. Maybe would have gone like this, and then, again, have her look into the light in a more flattering direction. Interesting. They should be touching or having much more of a connection than they have. You're just missing any type of, again, gesture or Duchenne smiling. Can't say that enough, honestly. Like, get them connected beyond just like having a staring contest. When people are staring at each other and they're this close together, it just feels stiff and forced. People don't do that in real life, unless they're like getting ready to kiss. But even then, this just doesn't feel right for the picture. I love the framing with this reflection and this rectangle. Like, you've done a really, really good job of setting that whole thing up. You just need more connection between people, so much more. Okay, the light emphasis. Really take a second. Look at this photo. Where does your eye immediately draw? For me, it's the relative brightest part on the frame, which is right here on their arms and bellies, not their faces, and not really anywhere else that you probably would maybe want them to look. If you have to use gradients, dodge and burn, whatever, get this darker so that their faces are much more likely to be what your eye just immediately draws to. You did such a great job framing them in these, blue lights or whatever those are, and like framing them in a nice horizon, and all that stuff is great. But the emphasis on the light and where your eye draws is right here, and that is not what you want. So fix that. And that's more of just an editing thing, or if you held the light higher up when you were actually shooting, obviously that would have been good too. Love the toning on this. Really, really cool. Great warmth. Great kind of, I don't know if this was natural to the light, but I'm getting this feel of this wash of light kind of coming in here, which is nice, which is just, helping emphasize me looking kind of down in their direction, which is good. I even like this little kid, even though he's not composed super well. He's not so distracting that it's a compositional ruining thing, and it's just this nice little bonus. I love that. The only real thing is that their rectangle is here, and that bottom line is cutting her face off and his chin. So if they could have taken a few steps closer to you, or if you could have angled a little bit lower to frame them perfectly in this rectangle, I think you would have just completely nailed it. Or you could have maybe had them a lot closer to you and composed them here between the two windows. But overall, nice vibe and nice feel, great light, great processing. Also love the processing on this. You don't see this pose a lot with her hands, so that's really cool. It feels a little weird, a little contortion-y, seeing so much of her wrist, but overall I like the direction you're going with that. It's different. And I love that they're actually touching and connected. Maybe if her eyes had been a little bit more over her shoulder, it would have felt that she was paying a little more attention to him and connected to him. But yeah, great use of foreground blur, maybe add in a little more darkening gradients to get rid of that part of his shoulder. But yeah, not much more I can say about that. Nice. She's got a great expression. Even though it's simple and just a simple smile, it's him I'm lost on. I'm not loving where he's at. Either he has a resting angry face, or I don't know what the problem was, but you needed to see either more of his profile or have him sort of looking at hands again, like doing something else. It just doesn't work for him. But you're in a good situation compositionally, these kind of leading lines, nudging you to look in their direction. That's awesome. And I love this wallpaper in general. It's really, really cool. Nice job cutting their legs off, not at the knees. It's just he's lost in that expression a little bit. Group critique number 3 is done. I'm going to open up submissions for number 4. Feel free to just dump some files in there whenever you want. There will be a link in this post. Let me know any comments and feedback about it. I always love hearing about what people did for post-processing, or if they disagree with my analysis and assessment of what everything looks like. Please reach out at any time. I'm going to end it there. Yeah, we'll talk soon.